Hey guys, what is up? Welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast presented by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Steven. I am your host. We are coming to you Monday morning, the week of training camp. Super excited to get football back. The offseason is so close to being done with. So very excited about that. Very excited about today's show as always. And joining me today are the Davante Adams fan, a.k.a. Alex, and Are We There Yet, a.k.a. Tyler. So Tyler, how are you doing today, man?
You know, I would answer that question, but I believe that's a HIPAA violation. So how are you, Steven?
Well done, sir. Well done. I'm doing well and happy to be back home. Happy to be back in front of a mic and good Wi-Fi connection. So I had a great vacation, but, ready to be back to normal. So, yeah. Alex, how are you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. Excited to be on pod today.
Yeah, we got a fun discussion. As you can see by Alex's username, we are going to talk about the Davante Adams situation. And we're also going to talk about Josh Palmer and Rashawn Slater and kind of where they are standing with their current contracts. And then we'll, unfortunately talk about some of the COVID situation, which has been going on. We also have an interview with Chargers tight end Steven Anderson, which we will get to right now. The audio version will happen right now, and then the video version will be in a separate video. So check that out on YouTube. And here is Steven Anderson. All right, so let's talk about these Chargers rookies. Again, thanks so much to Steven Anderson for joining us. Josh Palmer has officially signed his contract, which means only Trey McKitty and Rashawn Slater are left for the Chargers rookie class to be finished. We kind of all share the same viewpoints here. So, Alex, I'll let you start off. What's your first takeaway from Josh Palmer signing and Rashawn Slater not signing just yet?
I think the Josh Palmer thing is good. Obviously, I think they have two left now in Trey McKitty and Rashawn Slater to lock down. I know there was a lot of concern about the Rashawn Slater thing and that he's one of the last three rookies to be unsigned along with Trey Lance and Zach Wilson. Personally, I'm not very concerned yet. I think it becomes an issue when it's an issue, right? 2 weeks from now, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport comes out and says, hey, he's considering a holdout. Then, we're in a whole new ball game there and different territory, but it seems like Daniel Popper believes he's going to be at training camp. So therefore, I don't think this is an issue. And I think it's actually pretty likely that within the next week, he signs, much like Justin Herbert did right before training camp last year. So I know there's a lot of concern, but to me, this says less about the Chargers' history, with Bosa and LT and Rivers back in the day and their rookie contracts. But I think this is a lot more about the league and the state of the league coming out of the pandemic, just because the Chargers last year, they were late, but there were like 4 or 5 other teams that also signed their rookies late, in addition to, I believe it was Andrew Thomas and Cesar Ruiz were a couple of them. Yeah. So to me, not an issue yet. Has the potential to become one, much like Tyler said last time, but I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's not a big deal just yet. Looking at guys that were signed last season, obviously, when you're listening to this, it's July 26th. Well, hopefully it's July 26th when you're listening to it. That's when Herbert was signed. Andrew Thomas wasn't signed until July 27th. Tristan Wirfs, July 22nd. So a lot of these guys are in that kind of July 20s range. Now, of course, it can be concerning in the future if it keeps going, but I get that there was an issue with Joey Bosa in his rookie season, but Telesco has very much so corrected that mistake, making one of the highest paid defensive players in the league. And so it's not going to be an issue. I don't know why it hasn't been taken care of yet, but I don't think it's an issue yet.
Yeah. First of all, Josh Palmer, signing is great for him. Him coming from Canada and having the kind of upbringing that he had is truly a fantastic story for the Chargers. And I'm excited to see what Palmer brings to this team, as we've talked about. So in terms of Rashawn Slater, I understand the Chargers definitely have there's some definite gray area with, first round rookie contracts, but, the new CBA essentially makes holdouts impossible, or there's no advantage to holding out for a player. If Rashawn Slater starts missing practices because his contract isn't signed, the Chargers can fine him up to $50,000 a practice, I believe. So, when you're on a rookie contract, that's a ton of money. You're not going to miss out on $50,000 before you even get to play a game. So rookie contracts are so straightforward now with the new CBA. really the only like negotiating that happens is about bonuses and when bonuses happen and things like that. There could be some holdup there. I seriously doubt it. Like Rashawn Slater was a full participant in all of the OTAs and all of the mini camp practices. He has an apartment now in Los Angeles. Like I seriously doubt that there's anything going on. I think this is just the Chargers' way of doing business now. Like they just wait until they absolutely have to, which is obviously annoying. But I don't think that there's anything actually serious going on.
Yeah, I mean, I push back on, the whole they're just waiting for the sake of waiting, because the Chargers do two things specifically with their rookie contracts. They have to include offset language in there, which not a lot of other teams do. And they do want to pay the signing bonus or the rookie bonus in March as opposed to December, end of January. So those are the two things that they mandated for every rookie contract. Joey Bosa, that's what he was pissed about in August. He was the top 3 pick, and he's like, all right, you guys are penny pinching a little bit over here. It's the same amount of money either way, but the Chargers have been very finicky in an era where teams haven't been like that on rookie contracts.
Sure.
So there still is a little bit of that, I think, in this situation. Obviously we don't know specifically what the issue is with Slater, but I think the reason that the Chargers have waited is because they basically want to get these agents to say, hey, take it or leave it, right?
Yeah.
And I think the resolution to Bosa when that happened was they agreed to pay 15% of his signing bonus, which was $17 million at the end of December, and then they agreed to pay the rest of the 85 in March. So I think that was kind of the resolution, and then Bosa compromised on the language of the contract. But I'm not concerned about Slater. I think it'll get done. He's going to be in training camp. But, I do think the Chargers are a little finicky when it comes to this stuff when they really don't need to be, since the CBA has laid out that the money is going to be the same either way. Like, I just don't get why they're like this. People have brought up Spanos' liquidity as an issue. I don't think he's broke or anything. I don't think that's a problem. But I do think the Chargers can be a little annoying when it comes to, the standards and not wanting to break precedent for rookies.
I guess the only thing I could add to this, if I were to make a guess, and it's a wrong guess, is that there's some tie-up between the fact that technically he could be a tackle or guard, but they've come out and said that he is their tackle. So I don't think that is the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't think of what else the holdup is other than what you're saying.
Yeah, and I wonder if that is more of an issue for like down the road. Like I wonder if that has an effect as his rookie contract, or if that would be more of a thing with a second contract. But Alex brings up a great point. This, like I said, it is annoying. I personally don't think that there's going to be any issue. It would be very Chargers-esque if like tomorrow morning we tweet out this episode and then like an hour later Rashawn Slater signs his contract.
It would be very us-esque.
True that. So we are going now to talk about the NFL's new COVID protocols. So if you're sick of talking about listening to COVID,
we have timestamps.
We have timestamps, and you can fast forward. But I think it is really important that we talk about this because the NFL has been very firm on their stance. They're essentially saying get vaccinated or suffer the consequences. So with this new memo that they sent out, teams, if they have to postpone a game because of COVID due to a breakout from unvaccinated players, they are liable to forfeit that particular game. The NFL is not going to add a week 19 and reschedule games. So if you miss a game because of COVID, tough shit, you're going to forfeit. The other thing that's really even more important than that is that if you have to forfeit a game, neither team in that instance gets paid. So you're not only affecting your own team, but you are affecting the other team who theoretically could still play a game. So really unfortunate for some of the players, and I totally understand their gripe from their money standpoint. But the NFL has been very clear from the start. If you want to get back to normal, you have to get vaccinated, and that's kind of where the NFL has taken that stand. So Tyler, we'll start with you on this one. What was your initial reaction when you saw this memo, and how do you think it could specifically affect the Chargers?
Oh man. First I'll say that I'm glad that the Chargers have increased their vaccination totals, being from under 50% to over 70%. And maybe that was just the plan, I guess, all along. Like we're just gonna like at this certain point, all y'all that are holding out are gonna get vaccinated. We're all gonna take care of it at the same time. I don't know. First reaction to this was kind of like, yeah, I mean, they're forcing people's hands. And I talked about in a not so well received video, the risks of the season. You know, that you'll risk your season if your team is not vaccinated. I'm not saying anything about the vaccination or the science behind it. I'm just saying, like, if you're not vaccinated, you might blow it for your team. But now, not only can you blow it for your own team, and only for your own position group, you can blow it for the other team as well. I mean, it just reminds me of any military training movie. They're all in the barracks, and the guy that's kind of a misfit is beaten up by like everyone like takes their socks and puts like a bar of soap in it and just beats the guy up because he's not like following along or whatever. You seen Hacksaw Ridge, where like he won't like fire a gun or whatever, and they beat him up because he won't like that. That's kind of how I feel like some of these guys are going to be looking at some of the unvaccinated players. Like, you better do that because I got a family to feed, and some guys can handle the loss of losing a game check. Some of these guys are probably just barely making it by, and the fact that they could, affect their pocketbooks like that is something. As far as the Chargers go, it depends. Like, how could it affect their season? They could lose a game. They could play the Raiders, and somehow the Raiders like fuck up, and they have all their vaccination issues, and then the Chargers can't play, and they lose game checks. They forfeit the game too, right? Like they lose, like they get a loss in the playoffs. That's
my understanding.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty awful. For some reason, I know Bill Belichick is going to find a way to use his advantage. I don't know how that's possible, but I feel like some way this is going to swing in their advantage. But I don't know. I don't think it'll affect the Chargers if they're fully vaccinated. Well, I guess they could. I don't know. Somebody else take a swing. Alex?
Yeah. I think it's really just the COVID regulations being different that will, force people to vaccinate in addition to everything else, right? Like, it's going to be really annoying if you're at the facility and, you have to wear a mask and do all this other stuff while, all your teammates are in not another room, but they're following a completely different protocol than you are in terms of preparing for a game. Like, that just seems like on its face it would be annoying. And then you add up the stakes of everything else happening. Like Tyler said, I don't want to get into a vaccine debate because that's become a political fire ground, and it's just annoying at this point. Yeah, get the vaccine or don't. I don't care. But in reference to the Chargers, yeah, like it can cost them a game. We saw this with Denver last year, right? If all those Broncos players, or specifically in the quarterback room, were fully vaccinated, granted the vaccine wasn't around at the time, but if they were, then they wouldn't have had to miss that game, right? Despite they could have just gotten retested, and that would have been that. But yeah, the COVID-19 protocols were super strict last year. So, you're either making the decision to follow those protocols or, kind of get back to normal as normal can be at this point. And as far as like the DeAndre Hopkins freedom ? Stuff, look, they're your employer and they can, make these rules, right? Again, they're not mandating the vaccine. They're just saying, hey, here are the consequences if you don't. Right. The only people that they're really allowed to mandate it for are the coaches, because the coaches are NFL employees and they don't have any union, to my understanding. So that's what happened in Minnesota and New England in terms of the two coaches that resigned because they didn't want to take the COVID vaccine. So, it can be pretty bad for the Chargers, right? If they're not at 85 or 90% and they're at 70, that could be really bad. The one thought that I had also is just final roster construction, right? If you're talking about that cut from 80, they're at 86 to 53, right? And let's say, not going to name any names, but we're just talking about two players that are really close together. Let's call them player X and player Y. If player X is fully vaccinated and player Y, refuses to get the vaccine, but, they're kind of competing for the last receiver spot or the last cornerback spot, that could make a big difference in terms of which player ends up making it. So I think there's a lot of things to consider. I'm not going to get on a, vaccine political fireground debate, but it could end up being a big thing for the Chargers.
Yeah, and so the 70% thing, that came from Daniel Popper, just so we cover that base. He was hearing that they're pushing 75%. The league has asked NFL teams to get to 85%. Which is obviously, a vast improvement from where the Chargers were a couple of weeks ago when they were one of four teams under 50%. which led to Tyler kind of doing that video and discussing that. So, I understand like the players, they don't like to be they don't like to feel like they're being forced to do stuff. Like DeAndre Hopkins was like, well, I never thought that me not getting a vaccine could lead to me considering retirement. It's like, are we serious? Like, like you get a flu shot, right? Like you get a mump shot. Like what's the difference to me? So I don't know. From a player standpoint, I always just thought like it was more convenient to get the shot, right? Like if you don't have the shot, you have to wear a mask every single day at the facility. You have to wear a mask on the sideline still. You have to, submit to daily testing, and your life is significantly less convenient. And now the NFL is saying that you could potentially cause your team to forfeit a game and another team to forfeit a game. So I understand, players not wanting to feel like they have to do a certain thing, but this is where the NFL is making their stand. And I'm trying not to be as political as possible. The NFL cares about one thing. They care about their bottom line. They care about their money. And they lost a shit ton of money last year because of COVID. And so they're going to do everything they possibly can to make sure that they do not lose a lot of money. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to be surprised if in the coming weeks the NFL announces that only people who have been vaccinated can attend games, like fans. So the NFL is going to do everything they can to possibly make sure that COVID does not ruin their season for the second year in a row. And, having multiple games of, watching some Broncos practice squad receiver play quarterback, that's bad for the bottom line. That's bad for the league. So this is the NFL's decision. And, I hate to be a rules are rules guy, but this is your choice. And, a lot of people were like, the players aren't having a choice. They could have opted out. The NFL gave the players the chance to all opt out again. But really? That deadline passed. So if you didn't want to get the vaccine, you could have simply opted out, waited another year. But players didn't do that. That was their choice. Now they have to choose between getting vaccinated and having their life be a little bit more convenient, or not getting vaccinated and, submit to all that stuff and potentially cost your team some games.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I'll say is, as far as we're not adding a week 19, I'm like, all right, I'm going to call bullshit on that a little bit, because you guys just added a 17th game that none of your players wanted, and you just forced it on them. Right. That's pretty clear that that's what happened, and you're not going to add, a bye week. That's just kind of predatory on the players. Players union caved again, but granted, they don't have much of a choice. I just think, you were able to say, okay, last year we were supposed to have Ravens Steelers on Thanksgiving, and then we're going to play it on Tuesday. Like, okay, you wanted to do that last year, and now it's, no rescheduling. Like, I get the point, but like, I just feel like they're being a little fraudulent on that and just putting all the onus on the players. Sure. When in reality, like, they decided to make the 17 game schedule, and they decided to not add an extra bye week when, you can make an argument for that, both from a player health and safety standpoint and also a money standpoint, right? You have an extra week of games to advertise. So that's just my thing on it. But yeah.
Only other random thing I would add is, there's more than 7 days of the week, more than 1 day of the week. And if the Rams and the Chargers are sharing a stadium, and for some reason the Rams are playing that following week at home, and the Chargers can't figure out how to reschedule, perhaps that's something that affects their season, because it's harder to reschedule when you're sharing a stadium with somebody else.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, they were talking about putting, the concert is this week, so we can't put it on the game, right? And live events and stuff are coming back. So I definitely think that's something to consider. But even more so, that would lend the reason to creating a week 19, so you have a fallback option if something happens. Right? Oh yeah, so that's the part to me that I really don't understand.
Yeah, those are great points. And from a Chargers standpoint, like, it just makes me nervous, man. Like, this team cannot stay healthy as is. They had 4 starters miss games because of COVID last year. Like, last year was Jerry Tillery and Trey Pipkins and Kaiser White, but like, what if this year it's Justin Herbert or Joey Bosa or Derwin James? Like, it just makes me nervous. So, from a purely availability standpoint, I hope that all the players get the vaccine and the Chargers are able to kind of, avoid this. So let's move on to a more fun topic. We will be talking now about the Davante Adams situation, which really, like, if you've been following the Packers this offseason, it's just been wild how they have alienated arguably the best quarterback in the league and arguably the best wide receiver in the league. And meanwhile, they give a huge extension to a running back. So for those who may have missed it, Davante Adams has reportedly, according to Ian Rappaport, they were having contract extension talks pretty much all offseason. Davante Adams wants to be paid the highest amount for any receiver in the league. He wants to surpass DeAndre Hopkins' contract, which was handed out by the Cardinals last year. So that's where Davante Adams stands. And apparently those talks really soured recently, and now Adams and the Packers are in a very bad place, which led to Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams posting the same picture of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen as potentially an ode to the Last Dance documentary. So lots of drama going on in Green Bay, which is super weird. Like, I can't remember the last time there was this much dysfunction coming out of the Green Bay front office. But Davante Adams fan, Alex, we'll start with you here. Like, what do you make of this whole situation in Green Bay? We can talk about, potentially him landing with the Chargers or other places, but just your major takeaways from the Davante Adams situation.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about the Packers stuff first and then get to, Chargers possibilities. But, okay, first thing, Aaron Rodgers, can you just tell us what you want? Like, the cryptic, Last Dance posting, I get it, it's fun, but, and look, the Packers are a shithole front office that's stuck in the 20th century. That's the reality. They treat their quarterback like that, and really alienate everybody because, they want to be in this, Vince Lombardi philosophy where everybody is treated equal, when it's clear that in sports today, not everybody is treated equal, and you have to treat people differently. You do have to discriminate in terms of how you value players. That's just the reality of the NFL now. But yeah, so going to this Davante Adams thing, the one thing to consider is that DeAndre Hopkins did kind of break that free agent market, right? He got that $27 million deal. Now other teams have to beat that, because I believe the previous high before that was 22 or 24, and then the DeAndre Hopkins contract happened. So, Davante Adams has every right now to ask for 28 or 30. Right? That's the reality, just with how contracts work and the cap going back up, that's what he's entitled to ask for. I mean, really. And so I'm, really befuddled by the fact that the Packers won't give it to him. I know that they're in a concerning financial situation, but we've seen teams that have been tight against the cap constantly that have found a way to make things work when when it came time to make things work. So just Packers takeaways first. It's just really confusing to me that they're like this, because, with Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers for another 5 years, if you had that, you probably win a Super Bowl. Obviously they've had struggles in the NFC Championship game recently, but, those two are really electric together, and you have a Super Bowl contending core, that can last that long. So to me, it's just really weird and frustrating to see this situation going down there, particularly because Aaron Rodgers is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. So, that's just kind of frustrating. But, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Davante Adams. I assume he's going to hit the free agent market now, unless they can find a way to get a deal done probably, by the end of the preseason or something like that, which it doesn't seem like is going to happen. On top of the Aaron Rodgers thing, they don't want to pay him what he's worth. So, if I were to pay Adams, I would be out too.
Yeah, just real quick before Tyler jumps in, Julio Jones, he used to be the highest paid NFL receiver, at least in average per year, at 22. And then Arizona paid DeAndre a contract with a yearly average of 27.25. So that was quite a big jump forward from 22 to 27.25.
Yeah, no, definitely. And listen, if the Packers want to continue to be dysfunctional and just keep giving us their best players, that's fine by me. If they want to pay a running back instead of paying Corey Linsley for whatever reason that don't think makes any sense to any person other than the Packers, how about it? And if they want to give us Davante Adams, go for it. Of the little bit, I keep saying Bobby Peters' name because I've been reading his stuff. But what he was able to talk about in his book, the Packers were able to build so much of their offense because of Adams. And like I talked about in the video, the basis of the mesh are those two shallow crossers, but they take it to another step and they'll have Adams on the outside running, isolated one-on-one, running double moves as the first read. And you can do that because it's Davante Adams. Or they'll do crazy things like they'll have the running back in the trips formation, and then they'll have the running back in the backfield, Adams out in the trips formation, and then they'll switch them. So they send the running back out to the trips formation, and Adams is in the backfield. And they do crazy things just to try to screw over the man defense. And there's even one passage, I'm just paraphrasing, but in the book it says basically that defenses would generally, I forget what concept they were running on offense, but defenses were generally aware and ready for this offensive concept. Yet it basically didn't matter because Davante Adams is that good of a route runner, and so they would call it anyway against a tough defense and a good call by the defense, and they would still move the chain. It's not a big deal because you had Davante Adams. And listen, man, if the Chargers end up having about $60 million in cap space next year, and all it costs is 27, 28, whatever million for Davante Adams, I'm going for it. That is the ultimate all-in move.
Yep.
Pairing him with Allen would be great. Now, I guess the other question is, if Mike Williams has a really good year, which one do you pick? I mean, I would go Adams, but like that is definitely something that the Chargers, would be considering, and they might go Williams.
I've from my point of view, like Mike Williams would have to have like a crazy good year, like above 1,200 yards, above 10 touchdowns for me to like even consider that. Like, we've talked about, on this podcast pretty much, ad nauseum at this point, like next year is the big push year. You know, you'll have year 2 of Brandon Staley and company. You'll have year 3 of Justin Herbert. And that's kind of been, the model for, rookie, quarterbacks on the rookie contracts is, you throw them through the ringer, you throw them to the fire, throw them to the wolves, whatever you want to say in year 1. Year 2, you patch up some holes, and then year 3, you push all your chips in. We saw the Chiefs do this by, trading for Frank Clark and signing Sammy Watkins. And, you could argue about how good those players are and really how much they really helped. But the bottom line is that they pushed all their chips in, and they have a Super Bowl, and they've been to 2 Super Bowls in a row. And now, now you can look at the Cleveland Browns. They're kind of doing the same thing. Baker kind of struggled. They traded for Odell. They signed Jarvis Landry. Now they're pushing their chips all the way in, and they're able to kind of, go for it. So that's the big year. And, Davante Adams, like the thing about the free agency market next year is that the Chargers will have cap space to sign, another elite player. Like they signed Corey Linsley this year. They'll have the space to do it next year. They'll have, in my opinion, at least $60 million, depending on how much they exactly roll over from this year. Then they can cut Brian Bulaga and get up to 70. Like they have the cap space to do it. Like, so, whoever that marquee free agent is, obviously remains to be seen, but there's no chance that anyone that is a free agent next year is a better player than Davante Adams. He will be the best player on the market regardless of position. And so, I've been a very strong proponent of you can rebuild your receiving core through the draft. It's one of the more easily replaceable positions through the draft. Like we've seen all these rookie receivers come in and make strong impacts. But if you can get a truly like scheme altering, franchise altering player, you do it. And if you can add a player that is going to help your young quarterback, I think you do it. And, a lot of people will say like, well, if they cut Brian Bulaga, they'll need a right tackle. They could potentially need an edge rusher. If they have $70 million, they can still assign other players. Like they can still go and do that. They still have 10 draft picks. It's not like signing Davante Adams will be the only move that they make. And so in my opinion, you add an elite player, and sure, it's not at a position of need, but the flexibility of having Davante Adams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and whoever they find at tight end, like that is just so tantalizing. And that would be amazing to watch, even if you have an average quarterback. To pair those 3 with Justin Herbert, who I think we all agree is going to have a very special season, I don't see how you say no to that.
Yeah, and so I'll be kind of releasing an article sometime tomorrow on Bolt Beat about Davante Adams and why I think it's kind of a no-brainer. But just to kind of break it down, I mean, look, we talk about maximizing Justin Herbert's rookie contract, and then there are still some of you fans out there that are like, I don't know, maybe do I want to pay the best receiver in the league? Like, what are we talking about? We're talking about maximizing his window. And as far as cost is concerned, even if you're telling me Mike Williams balls out, 1,200, yards, 10 touchdowns, something like that kind of season, I'm still taking Davante Adams over him like pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
And it just relative to the cost, right? So let's say they do indeed cut Brian Bulaga like we expect, and they have 60 million to work with at the cap, or 70 million, whatever it is. So you're probably going to extend Derwin James with some of that, right? So that'll be 20 million.
Sure.
We'll see what happens with Jamal Adams in Seattle, because that could affect the Derwin James market. But okay, so you're paying Derwin 20, and you would be paying Mike Williams probably 20 as well, right? If we're assuming that he has the kind of year where he does ball out, right? So what's the real difference between paying Derwin and Mike Williams 40 and paying Derwin and Davante Adams 50? Right? Like that's the kind of thing that to me is like, yeah, sure, it's a $10 million difference, but you can also just mitigate that in some ways, right? You can extend Linval Joseph like we talked about and then save cap space. You can, replace Chris Harris and Linval Joseph with some other guys around the league or some of the rookies that you're developing on the team, plus the 10 draft picks next year. And you can, just make moves like that, right? So to me, and the reality is, we talk about maximizing Herbert's window. When the Chargers do eventually sign Herbert to an extension, like that'll become the time when, it's time to find value in the draft, and it's time to penny pinch and find that veteran who wants to come, ring chase with the Chargers, right? Kind of like the Chiefs do now. But, so that makes this era more important, right? Like for when that time does hit the Chargers, right? And that cap hit does become significant to work with. So to me, it's just, it's a no-brainer. Like he's better than Mike Williams. He's frankly better than Keenan Allen, but we're talking about pairing them together, right? Keenan obviously got that extension, and you would have the best wide receiver duo in the league with Justin Herbert, with Austin Eckler, potentially with another tight end too, or somebody like Donald Parham develops. That offense becomes a lot more dangerous, or our guest Steven Anderson. So I think that becomes a really interesting proposition, right? I get why people are concerned about the money. And you could say, hey, this would be better spent elsewhere. But in the NFL, like you ultimately win on your high level talent. And, that's what the Chargers kind of lacked during the Phillip Rivers era, frankly. Like there were years where it's like, hey, Eddie Royal is our second best receiver. And none of us are concerned about this. Or Stevie, the years of Stevie Johnson and that kind of like ragtag group of guys that they would just throw together. Not dissing any of those guys. I'm just saying, we don't want to repeat that with Justin Herbert and just say, okay, here's some good weapons, but we didn't take the time to maximize them like we could have. And just frankly, last point, like players like Davante Adams don't become available in free agency. Like, usually teams lock them up and say, hey, we're going to give you a franchise tag, or we're going to give you, some 4-year deal to make you the highest paid receiver, whether that was Julio, whether that was Hopkins, right? Obviously Hopkins ended up kind of being with another team when he signed that deal, but still, like, the Cardinals weren't going to let him walk when they traded for him. That was very clear, and that showed how much they valued him. So yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's maximizing Herbert's window. It's improving the team, and really, it's about making that big push, like Steven and all of us have said 500 times on the show.
The only thing I'll add is looking at the free agent crop next season. Like, if you'd rather have Davante Adams or right tackle Jermaine Ifedi, like there's not like a lot of tackle options out there. Like use your draft picks for that. Or, I think edge rusher, like technically Von Miller is going to be available, Chandler Jones and Hassan Reddick, but they didn't work out any of that this offseason, at least with Reddick or Miller. So like, I don't know how much interest there is there. So, if you're asking me if I could take Davante Adams or, 33-year-old Chandler Jones, no offense to Jones, he's had a good career, I'm probably going with Davante Adams. Like, there's nothing in the free agent market at those two important spots that I would really consider over Davante Adams.
Right, and like I said, he's going to be the best player in the market. Like, it's totally possible that he, they work something out with the Packers, or like Alex said, they do franchise tag him. But at this point, it seems like it's going to be trending towards him becoming a free agent. The other thing to mention in that regard is he apparently has talked with Derek Carr about teaming back up. Of course, he is very good friends with Derek Carr, and they were college roommates at Fresno State. But like, if you're being objective and like looking at the best places in the league for someone like Davante Adams, who is going to be getting, his last big payday. You're looking at a place, just like around the league. And I have a hard time, of course, trying to be objective as possible, right? I have a hard time believing that
none of us can be as objective as possible. We'll be like, oh, well, actually, if you look at it logically, the Chargers make more sense than the Raiders. Yeah, because we're never going to say anything different.
Well, right, of course. But I do think on paper, the Chargers have a much more appealing draw than playing with the Raiders.
Right.
Of course, you have a good relationship with Derek Carr, but what if John Gruden doesn't have a good relationship with Derek Carr, right? Gruden has been very hot and cold when it comes to his quarterback. And, what if Davante Adams signs with the Raiders and then the next year Derek Carr's not on the Raiders anymore? That would be a very shitty situation for him. So I think the Chargers could obviously offer him, the Raiders have cap space too. So theoretically they could each offer him, the same kind of contract. But, with the Chargers, you have the long-term stability with a new head coach, with Justin Herbert. And then, you can obviously throw in Keenan Allen too. That's a big, big chip for him. He's never played with a really good supporting cast, outside of when he was a young guy with Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb, where we're still kind of in their heyday. But, I guess you could make an argument for Darren Waller, but, I think playing with Keenan Allen would be quite a big draw for him. But then again, like Alex is saying, I'm trying to be objective, but also it's really hard when it comes to this particular topic.
Right. But I think the Keenan Allen thing is a great point, right? They both seem to have kind of a rapport with each other, and both of their play styles fit, like a puzzle piece. It would be kind of immaculate just how well they fit together. And both of them have said that as much publicly. So to me, that is the draw, if there is one, right? Because Davante Adams can go Chargers are still the Chargers, and I want to play with my friend Derek Carr in the stadium with the team that has fans, right? I'm just purely approaching that from that kind of standpoint. But
sure,
no, the Chargers have a lot to offer Davante Adams, and they're one of the 6 teams that will have $50+ million in cap space to work with, not including a Brian Bulaga cut, right? So there could be more potentially on top of that. But the one thing that I hear from Chargers fans a lot, and this has come up with Davante Adams, is, oh, well, Justin Herbert makes his receivers better. So therefore, you don't want to get better receivers. And I would point out, have you seen what the fuck is happening in Green Bay? They have neglected the receiver position in getting Aaron Rodgers weapons, and now he wants to leave. So, Justin Herbert is good, and he can shoulder some of that burden. But you don't want to draw this out to the point where, he doesn't feel it anymore here, right? And I'm not saying that will happen, but giving Justin Herbert just Jalen Guyton and some of these guys, not that they're bad, right? But you want to give him the best weapons you can possibly give him. That doesn't necessarily mean spending the money on Davante Adams, but it means keeping your quarterback happy, right? And that's been the whole thing that's been going on here. So to me, it's just been frustrating. Edge is important, offensive tackle is important, but in this league, more so than it was 25 years ago, so are your skill position players, right? So I would just say that's why Davante Adams is important. Not saying it has to happen. Of course, he still has to hit free agency first before we can, really start to seriously talk about these things, despite the fact that we just spent 20 minutes on it. We're spending a little bit of time daydreaming. But to me, it's just a no-brainer. You just have to get that weapon for Herbert and, figure it out later, right? If that costs, a quarterback maybe that you want, or, something else that you want for a certain price, so be it. But you can move the money around in other ways, and it's the most offensive league it's ever been. To me, it's just no-brainer.
Do you think not only reason, but one of the reasons they'd be adverse to an Adams signing is, I guess, if you pool together your analytics guys. Oh no, the analytics guys they say receiver is the most important. Okay, never mind. Then I have no qualms with any of this. The idea of Herbert not needing another receiver because he did fine with like Guy Johnson. Like, go watch the Miami game, go watch the Patriots game, go watch like the last 10 years of Rivers' career, and tell me if that works out. It's the same people that were like, well, Rivers was good, or excuse me, well, he was, but Herbert was good under pressure, therefore let's not get him an offensive line. Like, just because I don't get in an accident in my current car doesn't mean I should just go find like the shittiest car possible and just do donuts in it because I've never been in an accident. Like, I don't get that argument at all.
No, I don't get it either. And like, I guess, if there comes an elite edge rusher that is still young, and I have to choose between that player and Davante Adams, like, I guess I would consider taking the edge rusher there. But that's the thing. Like Alex said, like, these players don't become available. So yes, in a vacuum, I'd rather have an elite edge rusher to pair with Joey Bosa. But if I can get Davante Adams, I'm going to do it. And I firmly believe, like, if you get Davante Adams on this team, that makes the Chargers contenders, like, right away. So that's the thing for me, is like, there's no downside. And, by the time you have to pay Justin Herbert all of his money, Keenan Allen's contract would come off the books, and all these other things would happen. So, you don't risk losing financial flexibility because you have the space right now with the rookie contract at your quarterback at the most important position. So I just don't see a downside to it, right? Of course, we're going to talk about this, all year long and all next spring. And then Davante Adams is going to sign with the Raiders or some shit, or re-sign with the Packers. And that's just going to be our luck. But for now, like, the thought of potentially getting Adams on this roster, man, it's so exciting. And, if it happens, we'll be, doing backflips. But if it doesn't, it's all in good fun right now at this point.
Yeah, and the last thing,
doing backflips.
Yeah, you ain't doing backflips with your knee surgeries.
Man, I can barely jump 20 inches high straight up now. So
just the last point I kind of want to bring up is you make a really good point with the extensions that they have given, right? Like, Joey Bosa's 5-year extension is formatted in a way that come year 4, year 5 of that contract, they've considered the fact that they have to pay Herbert, right? Keenan Allen's contract actually, ends right on the dot of when, Justin Herbert's rookie contract plus the 5th-year option would end, right? Like, so they've clearly considered the franchise's vision. And, if you want to make an offer to Davante Adams next year, you can say, hey, here's a 3-year, let's say market setting. So 28 times 3. So, you could say 84, right? 3-year, $84 million deal, 3 years, 90, whatever it is. And you can just say, all right, that's the deal. And that'll come, basically to the end of Justin Herbert's rookie contract, right? So again, that just highlights, I think, the point that there are ways where if you want to get a player, you can format and kind of move things around, right? It's not like the Saints right now who, have been pushing the cap around for 10 years and are, finally facing the consequences of it to some extent, right? The Chargers have $70 million in cap space and are really just at the beginning of any potential contending window.
Yeah, man, the Saints they're in trouble this year. Like, it's going to be, do you talk about a franchise that is, used to things a certain way? Like, the Saints are in trouble this year, with the Michael Thomas injury. That's going to be a tough one for them to swallow. So, Alex, Tyler, any other final thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
Yeah, I'm generally very irritated that Brady gets another easy shot through the NFC because the Saints and the Packers are crumbling. And so they're just going to walk to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, man, the NFC is it's bad. And if Aaron's not on the Packers, that's going to be a really easy walkthrough for Tom Brady. Meanwhile, there's like 12 teams in the AFC that could be playoff teams. It's just wild how, much that has changed. And hey, the Seahawks, one of those potential other contenders, they're about to pay a safety who can't cover or tackle, apparently, $17 million. So shout out to Rashawn Jenkins, who was better in multiple categories than Jamal Adams.
I don't know. I don't know if you guys saw this clip, but there's this clip of Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. I guess this was a couple months ago, and I just missed it. But it looked like very awkward, and Pete was like, "Hey, we're fine now," and just they were like talking to each other, and it reminded me of I don't know if Tyler knows this, but the old Dwight Howard, Stan Van Gundy clip where that report came out that he wanted him fired, and then he showed up right at the press conference and was like, "Hey man, Stan's my guy." I honestly think that like if Russ it doesn't go great in Seattle this year, Russ might want to trade. And I know a team who has 3 first-round picks to throw his way.
Oh, well, that team is also potentially getting Deshaun Watson in the coming weeks. So, we'll have to see there, which is another whole mess. So, all right, that's going to do it for us today, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. So excited that training camp is here. Tyler's going to be there on Wednesday, so we'll be able to talk about some of his observations on our next episode. And then I will be heading down for the practices on Friday and Saturday. So, the episode after that, from here on out, it's all actual football news, no more potential, hype season or rumors to talk about. It's all actual football. So excited for that to be back. And again, as always, make sure and leave us a rating or review, leave us a comment, make sure and like and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you guys next time.